Hi everyone, Sandra here from the Schwoben's Nest. Today I'm going to show you how to make these two Farm Fresh cutting board signs. What you'll need for this DIY is a cutting board. I picked this one up at my local Dollarama store. It was $4 and it's pure acacia wood. You'll also need some of the sawtooth hangers. These are the ones that I like to use. I picked these up at Michael's. Another thing you'll need is some Farmhouse style stencils. I picked these up at Dollar Tree and I've been using them a lot. Then you'll also need some paint. I'm using some black acrylic paint, the Rust-Oleum line of chalk paints in Country Gray and Linen White, and I'm also going to be using the matte Mod Podge just to give each of the items a nice finish so the paint doesn't scratch off. To apply the chalk paint, I'll be using the white paintbrush, I'll be using the foam brush for the Mod Podge, and for the detail work I'll be using this tiny little paintbrush that really works well for filling in the stencils. When I use stencils, I like to use a piece of painter's tape to make sure that everything lines up properly. The design and lines on this cutting board are just gorgeous, so I decided to keep the wood look. I'm going to stencil the word farm and I'm going to start right at the edge of the handle. And again, I always use a pencil just to outline my letters, and then I'll use my paintbrush and paint to fill them in. The next step is to use a pencil and freehand the word fresh. I'm just following along with some of my earlier crafts. This is why I use a pencil, because I can always erase. I'm using a bit of a combination of the word fresh that I did in my Farm Fresh egg decor and just changing it up a little bit each time I use it. Here's the font up close. Using the black acrylic paint, I'm going to start filling in the farm stencil. You can see here that I'm using a different brush than what I told you to use in the very beginning. I couldn't find my small one, so I was trying to work with this thicker one, but I ended up having to switch to a different one anyway, because this one was just too thick and I was making too many mistakes. Here's where I switched to one of my angled brushes. It's still not the ideal brush for this project, so I did end up finding my other brush later on. So now I'm going to start doing the word fresh. And if you haven't figured it out by now, I am really slow at doing my letters because I'm always very precise, but I always just take my time. So I'm not going to make you sit through this painful process. I will do a quick fast forward for you. Here's a close-up look of this Farm Fresh wood cutting board. I did end up putting a little bit of sandpaper across it just to rough up the letters, and then I used my matte Mod Podge and gave it a really thin coat because this was acrylic paint that I used and I didn't want it to scratch or flake off. This is how I did the second cutting board. I'm giving it 2 coats of Linen White chalk paint on both sides. Once the paint was dry, I took some 80 grit sandpaper and roughed up the edges because I wanted to see some of the wood showing through. This is totally optional. If you don't want it to have a bit of a rustic and worn look, you can just leave it freshly painted. For this white board, I'm repeating the same lettering process as I did on the wooden board, laying down the painter's tape to make sure I have the proper line marked out, and then tracing out the stencils with my pencil and freehanding the word fresh and then coloring it in with some paint. This time I'm going to use the Country Gray chalk paint from Rust-Oleum. Here's the completed sign. This close-up gives you a view of the sanding that happened around the edges. I also took my 80 grit sandpaper and just lightly went over the Farm Fresh letters to give them a more worn look as well. I hope you enjoyed the video and got some inspiration to create some everyday kitchen items into some beautiful signs for your home. If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and click the bell to get notified when I upload new videos. Thanks for watching!